Hi guys, this is a video I've been meaning to do for quite a while, since I think it was sometime before Christmas, but it might have been just after, I'm not altogether sure, but I mentioned in a video that I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship for me between spirituality and self-development, because I've had quite a lot of convoluted thoughts around this, and I realised that particularly in the pagan and New Age community, this is something that a lot of people kind of conflate. For a lot of people, self-development and spirituality are maybe not one and the same thing, but they're very much connected. They have a lot of things in common, or self-development might be important to them through their spirituality and all sorts of things like that. Generally speaking, I find that spiritually centered people, like I say, particularly on this kind of spiritual path, they are interested in self-development. They're interested in bettering themselves and knowing themselves better and all that kind of thing. So I suppose it's not really something that I fully got to grips with myself until relatively recently, because I had a few problems with the way that I thought that I was relating self-development with spirituality, and I also had quite a lot of questions myself about my own motivations for my spirituality. I did kind of mention that before. I think it was in my video about small rituals, daily rituals and small rituals, or something like that. Daily practice and small rituals and motivation, that kind of thing. I was talking about how the motivation for naturalists is different to people who are hard polytheists, or who feel as though there is some obligation on them outside of themselves to be revering a certain deity or certain deities, or whatever. And I was kind of talking about how that's different for naturalists, that it's kind of usually more self-motivated. There's often an element of self-development in there. There's often, the main reason for practice might be a sort of self-development oriented reason. So I've done a little bit of journaling about this and a little bit of thinking, and one of the things I came up with was that I realised that for me, spirituality, my own spiritual practice is in many ways my main form of self-development. Self-development really, for me at the moment anyway, is something that is really all-encompassing in my life. It's something that is pretty much present in every area of my life. It's present in the ways that I'm thinking about how to move my career forward, my career changes. I'm kind of trying to move out of one career, which I've only really recently set up, and into something different. It's related to my creativity, my spirituality, my relationships with others, my fitness, my diet, health, sleeping, you name it, and self-development in my life, it's involved. And I think that for me, it's always going to be that way. I'm always going to feel that I can be, I don't know if saying better is the best way to put it, but I can know myself and my needs better. I can always know myself and my needs better. I will always be changing. Those needs will always be changing. And it's important for me, therefore, to keep up with that. And I suppose self-development has always been a part of my life for me. It's not something that has just suddenly come out of nowhere. All my journaling that I did as a teenager, all of that was sort of self-development. It was kind of cathartic. It was getting to know myself and expressing myself and all that kind of thing. So you could say that my spirituality is an aspect of the self-development that is prevalent throughout my entire life. Mind you, that being said, my spiritual practice and my spirituality is more and more becoming a part of the rest of my life. Like, there isn't really a part of my life that I can say now that is completely divorced from my spirituality, except for maybe my full-time job, my almost full-time job. It's not particularly related to it's not related to spirituality in any overt way at all, but it's kind of creeping in more and more. It's becoming more of my everyday life and the way I think about things and the way I interact with people and the world around me. So maybe that divide isn't so easily made. But basically, the main problem that I came up with when I was trying to do this journaling and trying to think this question through was kind of like a chicken and egg question. Which came first, the self-development or the spirituality? And this is important for a couple of reasons. So on the one hand, you could say that the spirituality came first. So I started to get back on my spiritual path in a major way in 2011. I had been thinking about this on and off for a long time, since I was about 10 years old. I had kind of cycled through various belief systems and various practices, including, if you've watched my introductory video, which you know might well have done, you'll know what my spiritual evolution has been so far, and if you're interested in that, go and check that video out. So I had gone through my phase of greatest atheism and general disenchantment, I suppose you could say, when I was kind of in university and my gap year, and back in university again, I suppose you could say, is about, gosh, well, 5 years anyway, because it was when I went back to university again to do my master's degree. That was kind of when I started to get back into my spiritual practice and thinking about spirituality again in a major way. And that was partly, and I mentioned this before as well in the video about daily practice, that was partly as well because I moved out of home for the first time, and I just had the space, the physical space and the personal space to explore things in a way that I wouldn't have been able to when I was living with my parents. So ever since I started going down that path of spirituality again and started exploring why it was that I felt drawn to it. I mean, when I started getting back into it, I just kind of started reading again about magic, because I was thinking about a novel that I might want to write, and an idea for a story. And I was like, oh yeah, I should look up stuff about Wicca and about witchcraft and stuff. And it was more kind of almost the witchcraft aspects that were drawing me in at first. But very quickly I started to kind of question why I was being drawn back into this stuff at all, when I had thought that that was well behind me, and that, you know, I can't even remember exactly how I felt about it during my college years, but I didn't have any great regard for the whole thing at all. So once I started to get back into my spirituality, I also started to think more about my happiness, think more about my passions in life, about my creative outlets and things like that. Now, you could basically say that, like, my spirituality has sort of opened me up to a whole other depth of being. I realised after I started getting kind of heavily into spirituality, I got really interested in it in loads of different areas. I started reading blogs and forums and books, and I just, it became a burning kind of passion. And I realised that this was the first time that I'd felt that kind of passion in a really long time. I kind of always thought, oh yeah, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that. And there had been an awful lot of things in my teenage years that I was really, really passionate about. But, excuse me, that had largely been absent during my university years. And it was only really after the fact that I realised this. And I realised that that was why I'd had such difficulty figuring out what kind of career I should go after, what kind of road I should go down. I ended up going down a road that has ultimately not turned out very well for me, which is why I'm kind of trying to gradually work my way out of that career again. It's not bad, but it's definitely not for me. And yeah, the reason I ended up going down that wrong road was because I just wasn't feeling any passion about life in general. I was enjoying socialising, I was enjoying various things, I was getting into my first serious relationship when I was about 19, and all these different things were happening. I was growing up, but at the same time I wasn't really engaging with things on the level that I had, or the level that I can now. So getting into my spirituality and starting to explore those feelings, starting to explore any kind of feelings that I hadn't been exploring before, really started to open up new possibilities for me. And I started to realise that I had these levels of happiness and passion and enthusiasm that I had no idea that I could experience. Because even when I was a teenager and I was quite passionate about certain things, I was also quite depressed a lot of the time. So a lot of that passion was sort of intersliced with kind of very negative feelings at the same time. A lot of the things, I would feel very passionate about something, but at the same time I was utterly miserable. So it kind of masked the passion, if you see what I mean, and the happiness was sort of balanced with often utter despair. So I just hadn't ever experienced passion combined with happiness and optimism and joy really at all in my life, and I hadn't even realised that that was missing. Excuse me, I kind of keep on coughing, I don't even know why. But then on the other side of things, you could actually say that my spirituality came out of my need for self-development. And this in a way kind of makes more sense for me than the other way around. Although new depths of self-development have arisen from my spirituality, the reason I started going down that path in the beginning, I think, is because I was realizing that I wasn't completely happy. That started to happen around the time that I got into my first relationship, and we had major issues, quite not only because, but at least partially because I just started realizing that, oh, now that I'm happy in this area of my life, I realized that I wasn't happy in basically any other area in my life at all. I suppose when I was younger, I just had it in my head, oh, you know, when I'm in a relationship, when I'm finally going out with somebody that I really, really, really love, everything will be wonderful. And this was the first time in my life that I realized that that wasn't true. I was going out with somebody who I really loved, who really loved me, and we had a great time together, but I was still really majorly unhappy. And that confused me and scared me because I thought that there was something wrong with my relationship. And in some ways whatever that sentence should be. But yeah, it started opening me up to realizing that I needed to do some self-work, that I wasn't happy about my creative outlet, which was basically nil. I wasn't happy about my friends, my relationship with my parents, where my life was going. I had no idea what kind of career path I wanted to go down and all that kind of thing. So in a way, I suppose you could say that my spirituality was almost like an exercise in self-development, that it was me trying to be happy. And I definitely, at that point in my life, I was very definitely trying to be happy. Around the same time, I started up a creative blog, I started doing photography and all these things. And in a way, I was kind of reaching out. I was kind of desperately trying to grasp at something that would make me feel happy, kind of looking for that holy grail. And spirituality was kind of, I suppose it stuck for me because it worked. A lot of the things did work. I really enjoyed writing, I really enjoyed doing photography, and all of this kind of started coming up at the same time. I started realizing, yes, I can be happy and I am feeling happy. The way that this gets problematic for me, it's all very well, saying, oh, which came first, spirituality, self-development. In the end of the day, you might be saying, well, why does this matter on you? Why are you going on about this? The reason this is important for me is because it's to do with a pretty major part of my shadow self, actually, is this problem with feeling as though I lack compassion or I'm selfish. It's something that I have been struggling with for quite a number of years, and it's something I've come to terms with quite a lot now, and I have reached a point where I can accept that I'm not selfish, I'm not lacking in compassion, although I do quite often still question if I am as compassionate as I wish I was, and is that something that's innate? Is it something that I can change? That's still something that I'm working through and that I think about quite a lot. But one of the problems with the chicken and egg question about self-development and spirituality in terms of that kind of idea is the question of, is my spirituality really authentic? Is it coming from a pure place? Or is it just sort of a weird exercise in self-development? Is it just sort of like an accessory that I've just picked up and I'm using in order to sort of create certain patterns in my brain and to make myself feel better about myself, to make myself feel as though I'm doing something productive or creative in my life, and all of those kind of questions. And that kind of has plagued me on and off quite a lot, because it kind of ties in with the naturalistic question as well, the question of what is it, if you're a naturalist and you don't believe in personal deities, what is it that's motivating you to sit down and do ritual every full moon or dark moon or every Sabbath or whenever it is that you do ritual? What is it that is actually making you light those candles and do that ritual and engage? And for a long time I kind of thought, yeah, it's self-centric. I would be kind of reading blogs and watching videos and reading these people who were, say, hard polytheists talking about their spirituality and kind of thinking, gosh, that's it's coming at it from a completely different perspective, and in a way it seems more sort of more deep, more important, I suppose you could say. And this happens to me as well, not only with say hard polytheists or people who believe in, or any sort of hard theists, anyone who believes in personified deity. I experienced this as well with pagans or other spiritual people who are very community centered, who are activists, who have very passionate ideas about environmentalism and community and things like that. and society, and that completely is tied in with their spirituality for them. So then their spirituality becomes something that is focused outward. It's something that they are using in order to manifest a better world, and they use it often to feel more connected with other people and to better their connection with other people, to better society and the universe and earth, or whatever it is that they're putting this energy outward. And often when I read that kind of thing, I feel guilty, because I feel like what I'm doing is very self-centric by comparison. I'm looking inward. It's all about internal work and changing me. And that does make me feel uncomfortable sometimes. So, and that's the point at which I start to think, if my self-development came before my spirituality rather than the other way around, then is this an inauthentic kind of project? Is this something that is more to do with me being unhappy in this segment of my life and trying to change something? But I realised after some thought that that doesn't quite ring true for me. It's definitely true that my spirituality is self-centric. It's intensely personal, but I personally feel that that's okay. I've kind of come to this conclusion that, for me anyway, religion is about looking outwards and community and things like that. And I do think there's a very important place for religion to change society, to be something that brings people together, something that can be used in order to create social change, environmental change, hegemonic change, the kind of change that is necessary in our societies. I definitely think there's a place for religion to do that. I don't really see it necessarily doing it much at the moment. Maybe there are some movements that maybe there are some movements that I think that are helping with that kind of thing. I'm not altogether sure. But for me, it's just not connected to my spirituality, because I'm not part of a religion. And for me, religion might be all to do with that kind of community aspect and looking outwards. But for me, spirituality is about the more personal. It's about one individual person connecting to the divine. It's about your intensely personal, your personal consciousness, whatever that means. I mean, obviously, as a pantheist, I believe that I am absolutely, completely and utterly connected with everything around me. So in a way, my own consciousness is a bit of an illusion, and my sense of ego, my sense of separateness. But at the same time, this experience of cosmos that I am experiencing from inside my own body, and my spiritual practice is an exercise in me connecting with that all. And that's okay for me. And it's definitely not just an exercise in trying to be happier, or I mean, it is making me happier. But the reason that that's happening, I think, is because my spirituality actually does come from a very, very deep place inside me. It's something that has kept bubbling up year after year, even when I try to suppress it. And following my spirituality, I think it's one of the biggest things that I have ever done in terms of following my own intuition and following my own truth and doing something despite fear of what other people might think, despite thinking it's silly or pointless. I felt this urge towards ritual. I felt this urge towards connecting to something greater than me. And doing that took an awful lot of courage for me in the beginning, but doing it was absolutely necessary for me, and it absolutely comes from maybe the deepest part of me. Maybe you could say that it is an expression of what it is most fundamental, what the most fundamental aspect of me is. So my spirituality is an expression of that, but more and more I'm trying to express that in all sorts of parts of my life. And for me, spirituality and self-development, it's all kind of combining together in one big effort for me to do what I feel is the most important thing for every single person to do, and that is to find your own stories. Find your story at the micro level of yourself, your own personal story of your life, and how you have engaged with that life and your relationships with other people. Find the story that is most meaningful for you, and also at the macro level, find your cosmic story. Find those metaphors, those mythologies, and those novels, all of those things that just inspire you most and that ring true to you, that there is something. I think it's very important to have not only conscious narratives, but I do think that conscious narratives are important. I think it's important for us to have a conscious narrative of our own life that is empowering. I think it's very important for us to have a conscious narrative of Earth, of life, of the universe, of how all that works and how we fit into it. But it's equally important for us to find those narratives that just click with our unconscious. Find those stories that make us passionate, those theories about the origins of the universe, those theological ideas, those deities, those mythologies, like I say, those novels, those words, that poetry, that music, all of that stuff that just really evokes something in us. And we can't always consciously put our finger on what about it is that really sparks our passion. But I think all of that stuff comes together to kind of create this overarching story for us. And I like to call that my heart story. And for me, I think my spirituality, my spiritual practice has turned into a big project in finding that my heart's kind of deepest, most authentic and most true, for me, most true story. So I think that kind of starts to give you an idea about what my thoughts on this have been, and it's definitely something that I'm just kind of working through. It's something that's only started to come together for me in the past maybe a couple of weeks even. I think a lot of things have started to come together for me since the winter solstice, and that was perhaps even more transformational than I realised at the time. Things are starting to become conscious now, I think. Understandings that were there subconsciously are starting to kind of come forth. And one of the major things that happened for me recently was that that phrase, heart story, has become very important for me. I created an Etsy shop with that name, and I actually bought a domain name with that name. And I wasn't going to announce that yet, but it just feels right to announce it now, seeing as I found myself using that phrase in the video. That is going to be the name of my Etsy shop, and it's going to be the name of my website. I'm going to create a main kind of website that will bring together my blog and my videos and probably, bits and pieces like that. So that'll be down the line at some point. I just decided to buy the domain name, but I'm not pushing myself to get the website itself up and running yet. It might come after the Etsy shop or at the same time as the Etsy shop. I'm still not sure, and like I said, that probably won't be until spring. But it's just, it was one of those kind of funny things where I had been, this all ties in with my ebook, by the way, in a pretty major way, as it does with everything that I'm working on right now, is about that kind of basic concept. But I had been trying to think of a name for that book, and one of the things I had come up with was storying cosmos. And I like the word storying as a verb, but I realise that it's not the most accessible word in the world. People might look at it and say, what? As somebody who has studied English literature and is comfortable with critical theory and that kind of thing, it makes sense for me, but it might not be the most accessible phrase. And then I was just trying to think of a different name for my shop, because I had an Etsy shop called The Spinning of the Wheel, which is my blog name, but I actually haven't been happy with that name in quite a while, so I was like, why did I go ahead and get that name if I wasn't happy with it? And then, I did a bit of brainstorming, and Heart Story was just what came out at the end. When I hit on that, I thought that's right. That encompasses so much for me. And I think it's really particularly right for my Etsy shop, where I'm kind of going to be starting out with tarot readings, but it's going to be hopefully evolving into something more as well. I would like to offer a lot more at some point down the line. So enough rambling from me now. I've kind of gone quite off topic there, but I hope this made sense. I hope it was interesting. I hope it inspired you, and I'll talk to you soon, guys. Take care.